Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Book Summary Podcast. We're doing a deep dive today. You guys asked for it.
Right.
We're going deep on Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon.
Yeah, this is going to be fun.
It is. It's a really cool book.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack his key ideas about, unlocking your creative potential and busting through those blocks and building a fulfilling artistic path. So grab your notebook, settle in, and get ready for some serious inspiration. And if you guys are finding this deep dive helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more insightful book summaries.
Yeah, and one of the things that makes Cleon's book so refreshing, I think, is that he just kind of throws out the whole, tortured artist myth. You know what I mean? He
Right.
argues that creativity isn't about, suffering for your art. It's about finding joy in the process
Right.
and building a sustainable life that supports your passions.
Yeah, and he kind of dives right into this sort of radical idea
Yeah.
right off the bat. Nothing is original. He just puts it out there.
Mm-hmm.
He argues that everything we create builds upon what came before. And he uses this really cool analogy about two parallel lines.
Right.
You see the two lines, but you also see that negative space between them creating a third line. And that's how he's saying that combining existing ideas sparks something new. 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
It's such a great visual.
It is. It's very visual, and it's such a liberating concept, right?
Mhm.
It takes the pressure off trying to be completely original, and it just kind of encourages us to embrace those influences.
I think what's fascinating about this, too, is that he doesn't just tell us to, copy blindly.
Right.
He actually encourages us to go deeper, really analyze the work that inspires us. He even suggests creating a swipe file, a collection of things that you love, from quotes to designs to even snippets of conversation.
Ooh, like that.
Right. The
Yeah.
idea is to just surround yourself with good ideas and let them kind of marinate in your subconscious.
It's like building a library of inspiration. Yeah, and as you immerse yourself in these influences, you start to see patterns and connections, and you begin to understand those underlying principles and techniques that make those works so compelling.
Exactly. It's about deconstructing the work of your heroes, not just to imitate their style, but to understand their thinking, their process, their worldview.
Yeah.
It's like learning the alphabet or practicing scales. You're internalizing the fundamental building blocks of your craft.
Kleon even encourages stealing from multiple sources,
Yeah,
like creating this kind of Frankenstein's monster of inspiration.
I love that.
He points out that David Bowie famously said, "The only art I'll ever study is stuff that I can steal from."
And it's interesting to consider that originality often stems from just a lack of knowledge about sources and influences.
Mm-hmm.
The more we expose ourselves to different ideas, the more we realize that everything is connected.
That's true.
What we perceive as original is often just a clever combination or reinterpretation of existing elements.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if anything truly original even exists.
Right.
But even if it doesn't, the beauty is in the transformation.
Absolutely.
It's about taking those bits and pieces that resonate with us and filtering them through our own lens and creating something new and unique.
Think about how the Beatles started out as a cover band,
Right.
emulating their heroes like Buddy Holly and Elvis.
Mm.
But they didn't just copy. They absorbed those influences, experimented with different styles, and ultimately forged their own groundbreaking sound.
Right.
As the fashion designer Yohji Yamamoto said, start copying what you love. Copy, 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 copy. At the end of the copy, you will find yourself.
That's such a great point.
Yeah.
You immerse yourself in the styles you admire, and somewhere along the way, your own voice starts to emerge.
Totally.
Kleon points out that so many iconic artists, from Johnny Carson to David Letterman to Conan O'Brien, all started by emulating their heroes.
Right.
But they all ultimately found their own distinct styles.
Yeah.
And don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on those bell notifications so you don't miss out on these amazing insights. All right, so we've talked about embracing influences and stealing like an artist.
Yeah.
But how do we know what to steal?
Right.
Where do we even begin to find inspiration?
Well, Cleon has a really interesting take on that. He challenges the classic writing advice, write what you know.
Okay.
He says, write the story you want to read.
I've always found that advice a bit limiting.
Yeah,
What if I want to write about talking cats on a quest to save the moon?
exactly. Cleon argues that we create because we're passionate about certain types of art, certain genres, certain themes. He even suggests that all fiction is essentially fan fiction.
Mm-hmm.
He encourages us to tap into that well of passion, to write the stories that excite us, the stories we wish existed.
I love that.
Right.
It's about reclaiming that childlike sense of wonder and letting your imagination run wild.
Think about the musician Bradford Cox.
Okay.
He used to record fake albums of his favorite bands before their releases,
Right.
imagining what he'd want to hear.
Wow.
Eventually, many of those songs became part of his own band's repertoire.
That's so cool.
Right.
It's like he was creating his own version of fan fiction through music.
Exactly.
Shows that even just imagining the art we want to experience can be a valuable creative exercise.
Absolutely. It helps us identify what resonates with us, what gaps we see in the existing landscape, what stories we feel are waiting to be told.
And it's not just about writing stories.
Right.
This applies to any creative pursuit.
For sure.
If you're a painter, ask yourself, what paintings do I wish existed? If you're a musician, what songs are missing from my playlist? If you're a filmmaker, what movies am I yearning to see?
Those yearnings, those gaps in the existing landscape are where your most original ideas will emerge.
So instead of feeling pressured to invent something entirely new, we can draw inspiration from the things we already love.
I love that.
We can ask ourselves, what if my favorite book had a different ending? Or what if my favorite song was mashed up with a different genre?
Yeah.
That's where the magic happens.
That's where the magic happens.
So we've got our inspiration, we've got our tools now. How do we actually bring those ideas to life? What tools and techniques can we use to make our creative visions a reality?
Well, Cleon has some really interesting thoughts on that, and it might surprise you.
Okay.
He's a big advocate for using our hands, bringing the physical body into the creative process.
Interesting.
He wrote his book, Newspaper Blackout, entirely by hand,
Oh, wow.
using a black marker to redact words from newspaper articles and create poetry.
I've seen that book.
Yeah,
It's so visually striking.
it is.
And the poems are incredible. It's amazing what he was able to create with such simple tools.
And it's not just Cleon. The cartoonist Linda Barry has this great saying, in the digital age, don't forget to use your digits.
I love that.
Right.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful creative tools are the ones we've had all along. Our hands, our pencils, our paintbrushes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
While Cleon acknowledges the power of computers, he feels they can sometimes hinder the generation of ideas.
Okay.
We get bogged down in editing and seeking perfection too soon.
Yeah, it's so easy to do that.
Right. So he advocates for using analog tools to just kind of get those initial ideas flowing.
I think there's something about working with our hands that just connects us to the process in a different way. It's less about instant perfection and more about playful exploration.
Absolutely. It allows us to be more spontaneous, more intuitive, more open to happy accidents. Cleon even suggests trying a two-desk method.
Ooh.
One desk for analog work and one for digital. It's about finding balance and using the right tools for the right stage of the creative process.
So we've got our inspiration, we've got our tools now. How do we actually maintain that momentum and avoid getting stuck in a creative rut?
Cleon's got some great tips for that too.
Yeah.
He's a big believer in side projects and hobbies.
Okay.
He calls it productive procrastination, which I love.
I love that.
It's about switching gears when you hit a wall on one project and then returning to it with fresh eyes later.
Sometimes the best ideas come when you're not directly focused on the main task at hand.
Exactly. Cleon shares anecdotes about his own experience juggling music and writing, and how rediscovering his love for music actually benefited his writing.
Wow.
He encourages us to have multiple creative outlets and let them inform and inspire each other.
So you don't have to choose just one passion.
Right.
Let them coexist and see what kind of creative magic happens.
And you know, sometimes those side projects can even turn into something bigger.
Oh, for sure.
Cleon himself started his blog as a way to share his thoughts on creativity, and it eventually led to him writing Steal Like an Artist.
It's true. It's a great reminder that you never know where your creative path might lead you.
Yeah.
It's all about staying curious, experimenting, and following your passions. And if you're enjoying this deep dive, please hit that like button and share it with your friends. We really appreciate your support.
So you've embraced your influences, you're working on your passion projects, and you're feeling the creative juices flowing. Now, what about sharing your work with the world?
That's a big one. Putting yourself out there can be super intimidating, especially in the age of social media.
Cleon has some really insightful points on this too. He believes there's a benefit to obscurity in the early stages of creative development. It's about giving yourself the freedom to experiment, to make mistakes, to find your voice without the pressure of public scrutiny.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember leaving university and suddenly realizing that not everyone was automatically interested in my poetry readings.
Right.
I had to work to find my audience, to connect with people who genuinely resonated with my work.
And Cleon emphasizes the importance of connecting with other creatives online, building a supportive community where you can share your work, get feedback, and find inspiration.
He uses Bob Ross and Martha Stewart as examples of artists who generously share their knowledge and process,
Yeah.
attracting followers and customers in the process.
It's about building genuine connections, not just chasing likes and followers.
That's so true. I think people are drawn to authenticity, to see the human side of the creative journey.
And, when you're starting out, it's easy to get caught up in comparison. You see other artists who seem to have it all figured out,
Oh, yeah.
and you start to doubt yourself.
Yeah, I've definitely been there.
It can be paralyzing.
It can be.
But Creon reminds us that we're all on our own unique journeys. There's no need to compare ourselves to others. The most important thing is to focus on our own growth and development, to celebrate our small wins, and to just keep moving forward.
And to remember that every successful artist started somewhere.
Totally.
They all had to go through those awkward early stages, those moments of self-doubt, those rejections.
And even the most successful artists still face those challenges. It's part of the creative process. The key is to not let those challenges define us, to keep learning and growing and pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zones.
That's really inspiring. So we've talked about finding inspiration, honing our craft building community, and putting our work out there. But what about the practical side of things? How do we actually sustain a creative career?
Cleon doesn't shy away from those practicalities. He has a whole section on being kind, being boring, and being yourself.
Being boring. I thought we were supposed to be artists.
I know, right? It sounds counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But hear him out. He emphasizes the importance of stability, of having a solid foundation to support your creative endeavors. He reminds us that it's not the money you make, it's the money you hold on to.
So budget wisely, live within your means, and don't fall into the trap of consumerism.
Exactly. It's easy to get swept up in that starving artist myth, but in reality, having financial stability can actually free up your creative energy.
And speaking of stability, Cleon has a really interesting take on day jobs.
Yeah.
He doesn't see them as the enemy of creativity, but rather as a potential source of stability, income, and even inspiration.
Right.
He advocates for finding jobs that can teach you valuable skills or provide experiences that you can later incorporate into your art.
Like if you're a writer, maybe take a job at a library to hone your research skills.
Exactly. Cleon himself worked a variety of jobs before becoming a full-time artist, and he credits those experiences with shaping his creative journey.
Absolutely.
And even with a day job, it's crucial to establish a routine for your creative work.
Yeah.
He's a big believer in consistency in doing the work every day, even if it's just for a short period.
He highlights the calendar method used by Jerry Seinfeld to stay on track with his joke writing.
Oh, right.
It's all about building those chains of consistent effort.
That's a great tip. It's so easy to let life get in the way of our creative goals.
It is.
But having a routine helps us stay focused and make progress, even on our busiest days.
For sure.
And speaking of staying focused, Cleon suggests keeping a logbook, not necessarily as a detailed diary, but as a simple record of the things you worked on each day.
Yeah, it's like a map of your creative voyage, showing how far you've come and the paths you've explored. It's kind of beautiful when you think about it that way.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a great way to track your progress, identify patterns in your creative process, and even get unstuck when you're feeling lost. But what about the people we surround ourselves with? Do they play a role in our creative success?
Cleon definitely thinks so. He has a whole chapter dedicated to the importance of relationships, both personally and professionally.
He even highlights the importance of finding a supportive partner, someone who understands the demands and quirks of a creative life.
He quotes Tom Waits, who said about his wife and collaborator Kathleen Brennan, "She rescued me. I'd be playing in a steakhouse right now if it wasn't for her. I wouldn't even be playing in a steakhouse. I'd be cooking in a steakhouse."
Oh, that's so sweet.
I know.
It's a reminder that we don't have to do this alone. Find your tribe, your cheerleaders, the people who believe in your crazy dreams, and remember to be kind to them along the way.
Speaking of challenges, Cleon has a really intriguing chapter on embracing limitations.
Limitations. I thought we were trying to break free from those.
I know, right? But Cleon makes a compelling argument for how limitations can actually fuel creativity.
So it's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Exactly. When we have constraints, we're forced to be resourceful to think outside the box to make the most of what we have. He uses the classic example of Dr. Seuss writing Green Eggs and Ham with only 50 words because of a bet with his editor.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And the book became a bestseller. Who knew limitations could be so powerful?
Right.
It seems counterintuitive, but I'm starting to see how those constraints can actually push us to create our best work.
And sometimes those limitations can even become part of your unique style.
Mm.
Adding depth and interest to your art, it's about turning those perceived weaknesses into strengths. So rather than feeling restricted, we can learn to embrace those limitations and see them as opportunities for creative problem solving.
That's such a great takeaway.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we don't need to wait for the perfect circumstances to start creating. We can make amazing things with the time, space, and resources we have available right now.
Absolutely.
And you know what? We're going to take a quick break right now, but we'll be right back to dive even deeper into these incredible insights from Steal Like an Artist. Don't go anywhere.
And it's not just about like external limitations, you know?
Right.
Sometimes our biggest constraints come from within our own fears, insecurities, and self-doubt.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Those inner critics can be brutal. They're like, you're not good enough. Your ideas are stupid. You should just give up.
But Cleon encourages us to confront those fears, to acknowledge them, but not let them control us. He says the trip is to be too busy doing your work to care about the naysayers.
Easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's something to be said for just like putting your head down and doing the work, even when those voices of self-doubt are swirling around.
He also suggests creating a praise file, a folder where you save encouraging emails, messages, or reviews you receive.
Oh, I love that idea. It's like a little treasure chest of
Yes.
positivity that you can dip into when you're feeling discouraged.
Exactly. It's a reminder that your work does resonate with people, that you're making a difference.
Yeah.
And speaking of making a difference, Cleon has some really interesting thoughts on the relationship between art and commerce.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of artists struggle with, how to balance their creative passions with the need to make a living.
Cleon acknowledges that tension, but he doesn't see the two as mutually exclusive.
Okay.
He argues that it's possible to make a living doing what you love,
Right.
but it requires a certain mindset shift.
So it's not about selling out, it's about finding a way to share your gifts with the world in a way that's sustainable.
Exactly. He encourages us to think of ourselves as entrepreneurs, to be savvy about marketing and promotion, to build a business around our art. But he also emphasizes the importance of staying true to our values and not compromising our artistic integrity.
It's about finding that sweet spot where passion and practicality intersect. And Cleon has some really practical advice for building that sustainable creative practice. He talks about the importance of routine, of showing up consistently, even when you don't feel like it.
He highlights the Jerry Seinfeld calendar method again, where
Right.
you mark off each day that you complete your creative task.
Yeah.
The goal is to build a chain of consistent effort and avoid breaking it.
I've heard that method can be really effective for building habits. It's like you're visually tracking your progress, which can be motivating.
And he also suggests keeping a logbook, not necessarily as a diary, but as a record of what you worked on each day.
It's like a map of your creative journey, showing all the twists and turns along the way.
Exactly. It can be fascinating to look back and see how your work has evolved over time.
Okay, so we've talked about finding inspiration, honing our craft building community, putting our work out there, and even building a sustainable creative practice. What's the ultimate message of Steal Like an Artist?
Yeah.
What does Cleon want us to walk away with?
I think the core message is that creativity is accessible to everyone. You don't need to be a genius or have some special talent.
Right.
It's about being curious, being open to inspiration, and being willing to put in the work.
And to embrace those influences, to steal like an artist.
That's exactly, but steal wisely.
Of course.
It's not about plagiarism or simply copying. It's about taking those bits and pieces that resonate with you, transforming them, and making them your own.
It's like building a collage. You gather all these different elements, but the way you arrange them, the overall composition, that's what makes it unique.
I love that analogy. And ultimately, Cleon encourages us to have fun with the process, to embrace the joy of creating, of experimenting, of pushing our own boundaries.
Yeah. I think that's something that can get lost sometimes, especially when we start thinking about building a career or achieving success.
Yeah.
But at its heart, creativity is about expressing ourselves, connecting with others, and bringing a little bit of beauty and wonder into the world.
And Cleon reminds us that it's okay to be silly, to be playful, to not take ourselves too seriously.
Right.
In fact, that sense of playfulness can often lead to our most innovative and exciting work.
I love that reminder. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more thing that really struck me about Steal Like an Artist.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What stood out to you?
Cleon's emphasis on building a life that supports your creative work. It's not just about the hours you spend in the studio or at your desk. It's about cultivating habits, relationships, and even a mindset that allows you to thrive creatively.
That's a really insightful observation. He talks about the importance of having a supportive partner, a day job that doesn't drain your soul, and even a physical space that inspires you.
And it's about making choices that align with your values and priorities. Like if you need solitude to create, maybe don't move to the busiest city in the world. Or if you thrive on collaboration, seek out communities where you can connect with like-minded people.
He even encourages finding hobbies, activities that bring you joy without any pressure or expectation of turning them into a career.
It's like giving yourself permission to play, to explore, to simply enjoy the process of creating without any strings attached.
And sometimes those seemingly unrelated passions can actually fuel your main creative work in unexpected ways.
I'm a big believer in that. Okay, so to sum it all up, Steal Like an Artist is a guidebook for anyone who wants to live a more creative life.
It's packed with practical advice, inspiring anecdotes, and thought-provoking quotes.
Cleon encourages us to embrace our influences, find our own voice, and share our work with the world.
And above all, to remember that creativity is a journey, not a destination. So enjoy the ride.
Beautifully said. So what are your final thoughts on Steal Like an Artist? What resonated with you the most?
You know what I found most inspiring? Is Cleon's reminder that we're all part of a creative lineage. We're building on the work of those who came before us, and our work will in turn inspire others.
It's like that beautiful quote from Francis Ford Coppola. We want you to take from us. We want you at first to steal from us because you can't steal.
Yeah.
You will take what we give you and you will put it in your own voice, and that's how you will find your voice. And that's how you begin, and then one day someone will steal from you.
That's such a powerful way to think about creative influence. It's not about ownership. It's about contribution. We're all adding to the ongoing conversation of art and ideas.
And it's a reminder that we don't have to create in a vacuum. We can draw inspiration from the world around us, from the work of our heroes, and even from our own past experiences.
And Cleon encourages us to be generous with that inspiration, to share our work, to connect with others, and to keep the creative cycle going.
So steal like an artist, but steal wisely. Transform those influences. Find your own voice and contribute something beautiful to the world.
Beautifully said. And you know, while we've covered a lot of Cleon's key points, there's one idea that I think is particularly relevant for our listeners today.
Oh, I'm all ears. What is it?
Cleon's emphasis on using the internet as a tool for creativity.
Yeah.
He encourages us to build websites, start blogs, connect with other creatives online.
He's a big believer in using the digital space to share our work, find our audience, and build community.
And you know, this was written back in 2012,
Right.
before the rise of social media as we know it today.
So his advice is even more relevant now than ever.
Exactly. With platforms like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, there are so many opportunities to connect with people who share your passions, to get your work seen, and to even build a career out of your creative pursuits.
And it's not just about self-promotion. It's about building genuine connections, sharing your knowledge, and supporting other artists.
Cleon encourages us to be generous with our work, to give away our secrets, to be open about our process.
And that generosity often comes back to us in unexpected ways.
It's like planting seeds. You never know which ones will take root and blossom.
So embrace the digital world. Connect with your tribe and share your creative gifts with the world.
And you know, there's something really empowering about that message. In the past, creative success often depended on gatekeepers, publishers, galleries, record labels.
Right.
But now with the internet, we have the power to create and share our work directly with the world.
We can build our own platforms, find our own audience, and define our own success.
It's a really exciting time to be an artist.
It is.
Yeah.
And Steal Like an Artist provides a roadmap for navigating this new landscape. So if you're feeling stuck, uninspired, or overwhelmed by the vastness of the digital world, I highly recommend checking out this book. It might just be the creative spark you need.
I couldn't agree more. It's a must-read for anyone who wants to unleash their creative potential and make their mark on the world.
So go forth and steal like an artist, but steal ethically, of course.
Oh, for sure.
Always give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely. It's about building on the work of others, not exploiting it.
And that brings us to one of Cleon's most thought-provoking points. The idea that when we truly admire someone's work, we don't need their approval.
He argues that seeking validation from external sources can actually hinder our creativity.
It's like we become so focused on pleasing others that we lose sight of our own unique vision.
And you know, that can be a trap, especially in the age of social media, where it's easy to get caught up in likes and followers.
Right.
Cleon encourages us to create the work that we want to see, not the work that we think will get the most attention.
He reminds us that the truly innovative work often comes from a place of personal passion, not a desire for external validation.
Exactly.
And that can be a really liberating thought. It frees us up to experiment, to take risks, to create work that might not be for everyone, but that speaks to our own hearts.
And Cleon's book itself is a great example of that.
Yeah.
It's a very personal book,
Right.
filled with his own experiences and insights.
And it's resonated with millions of people around the world.
Exactly. Because it comes from a place of authenticity, of genuine passion for the creative process.
So if you're feeling called to create, don't let the fear of judgment hold you back.
Right.
Make the work that excites you, that speaks to your soul, and trust that the right people will find it.
And Cleon's book is full of little nuggets of wisdom like that.
Yeah.
It's a book that you can keep coming back to, finding new insights each time you read it.
It's like a creative companion guiding you along your journey.
And I think it's a book that can benefit anyone, not just artists. His ideas about finding inspiration, overcoming creative blocks, and building a sustainable practice can apply to any field.
Absolutely. Whether you're a writer, a musician, an entrepreneur, or simply someone who wants to live a more creative life, Steal Like an Artist offers valuable insights and practical advice.
So if you haven't read it already, I highly recommend checking it out. And if you have, maybe it's time for a reread.
Always a good idea. Okay, so before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
I'm ready. What is it?
Cleon talks about the importance of being kind, not just to others, but also to ourselves.
Yes, that's such an important message, especially for creatives who often face a lot of self-doubt and criticism.
Cleon reminds us to celebrate our successes no matter how small, and to be patient with ourselves when we stumble.
He encourages us to find joy in the process of creating, even when it's messy, challenging, or frustrating.
And to remember that our worth as creatives is not determined by external validation, but by our own commitment to showing up and doing the work.
That's a beautiful sentiment.
So as you go forth and steal like an artist, remember to be kind to yourself along the way.
Yeah.
Embrace your influences, find your own voice, and share your creative gifts with the world.
And don't forget to have fun.
Yes, fun is essential. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Steal Like an Artist. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more insightful book summaries. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what resonated with you the most. Until next time, happy creating.